Sarah Martinez had always believed in small acts of kindness. Working double shifts as a nurse at the local hospital, she understood how difficult life could be for people struggling to make ends meet. That Tuesday evening in October, she stopped by the corner market grocery store after her shift, exhausted but needing to pick up ingredients for dinner. The store was nearly empty except for a few late shoppers. Sarah grabbed a basket and wandered through the aisles, selecting items from her mental grocery list. She noticed an older man ahead of her in the produce section, carefully examining each apple before placing it in his cart. His clothes were worn but clean, and she could see him checking prices on everything he picked up. When Sarah reached the checkout line, the same man was ahead of her. His cart contained basic necessities: bread, milk, canned soup, and a small bag of apples. The cashier, a teenager named Jake, whom Sarah recognized from previous visits, began scanning the items. The man watched the digital display nervously as each price appeared. "That'll be $42.68, Jake announced. The man reached into his wallet and counted out crumpled bills, then checked his pockets for change. Sarah watched as his face fell. He was short by about $8. "I'm sorry," the man said quietly to Jake. "Can you take off the apples and the soup?" His voice carried embarrassment and defeat. Sarah noticed his hands shaking slightly as he tried to decide which items to remove. Without hesitation, Sarah stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said gently to Jake. "I'd like to pay for his groceries." The man turned around, surprise evident on his weathered face. "No, miss, I couldn't ask you to do that," he protested. "You're not asking," Sarah replied with a warm smile. "I'm offering. We all need help sometimes." She handed Jake her credit card before the man could object further. The transaction took only a moment, but Sarah could see tears forming in the stranger's eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "You don't know what this means to me. My name is Frank." Sarah shook his extended hand. "I'm Sarah, and it was my pleasure, Frank. Take care of yourself." Frank gathered his bags, thanked her once more, and walked toward the exit. As Sarah paid for her own groceries, Jake smiled at her. "That was really nice of you," he said. Sarah shrugged. "Just paying it forward," she replied. She had no idea that this simple act of kindness would set in motion a chain of events that would change her life forever. Frank Williams walked slowly to his beat-up Honda Civic in the grocery store parking lot, his mind racing with thoughts about the kind stranger who had just helped him. At 72 years old, he had experienced many things in life, but genuine kindness from strangers had become increasingly rare. The weight of the grocery bags felt lighter somehow, as if Sarah's gesture had lifted more than just his financial burden. What Sarah didn't know was that Frank Williams wasn't just any ordinary retiree struggling with finances. 40 years earlier, he had been known by a very different name in very different circles. Frank Ironhorse Williams had been a founding member and former president of the Desert Riders chapter of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. For 2 decades, he had commanded respect and loyalty from hundreds of bikers across the southwestern United States. Frank's transformation from motorcycle club leader to struggling retiree had been gradual. After his wife Margaret died of cancer 10 years ago, he had stepped away from the club entirely. The medical bills from her treatment had drained their savings, and his small Social Security check barely covered his basic needs. He had sold his prized Harley-Davidson and moved into a tiny apartment on the outskirts of town. Despite leaving the club officially, Frank maintained contact with many of his old brothers. The bonds formed during decades of riding together, facing dangers and supporting each other through life's challenges, don't simply disappear. Many of the younger members still called him for advice, and he was considered a respected elder in the motorcycle community. That evening, Frank sat in his modest apartment, staring at the groceries Sarah had helped him buy. He thought about how she had treated him with dignity, not pity. She hadn't made a big show of her generosity or acted like she was better than him. She had simply seen someone who needed help and had stepped forward without hesitation. Frank picked up his old flip phone and scrolled through his contacts. He found the number he was looking for and pressed call. "Tommy, it's Frank. Yeah, I know it's been a while." "Listen, I need to tell you about something that happened today." Frank spent the next 20 minutes describing his encounter with Sarah, explaining how she had helped him when he couldn't afford his groceries. Tommy Tank Rodriguez was the current president of the Desert Riders chapter. He had been one of Frank's protégés years ago and still held enormous respect for the old man. As Frank told his story, Tommy felt a familiar fire building in his chest. In the motorcycle world, loyalty and honor meant everything. Someone had shown kindness to their respected elder, and that meant something. "Frank," Tommy said when the story was finished, "this woman deserves to know that her kindness didn't go unnoticed. Give me her name and where she works. We're going to make sure she understands what her gesture meant to our brotherhood." Tommy Rodriguez hung up the phone and immediately felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. In the world of motorcycle clubs, respect and loyalty were sacred principles. When someone showed genuine kindness to a brother, especially an elder like Frank Williams, it created an obligation that couldn't be ignored. Tommy knew that Frank was too proud to ask for help directly, but the story he had just heard revealed years of struggle that the old man had been facing alone. After Margaret's death and medical bills, Frank had quietly faded from their community, too proud to burden anyone with his financial difficulties. Within an hour, Tommy had made a dozen phone calls. He contacted the officers of his chapter first, then reached out to allied clubs across the region. The story of Sarah's kindness spread quickly through the network of bikers who had known and respected Frank during his years of leadership. "We need to do something special for this nurse," Tommy explained to each person he called. "Frank Williams helped build our brotherhood, and when someone shows him kindness, they're showing kindness to all of us." Miguel Santos, the vice president of the Desert Riders, was the first to respond. "What did you have in mind, Tommy?" Miguel had ridden with Frank for 15 years and remembered how the older man had helped him through his divorce and financial troubles. "I'm thinking we organize a ride," Tommy replied. "A show of appreciation. Let her know that her kindness created ripples in a community she doesn't even know exists." The plan began to take shape quickly. Tommy contacted Jake at the corner market grocery store, explaining that they wanted to thank the nurse who had helped their friend. Jake, initially nervous about giving out customer information, was convinced when Tommy explained the situation and provided character references from local business owners who knew the club members. Through Jake, they learned that Sarah worked at Memorial Hospital and lived in the Riverside neighborhood. Tommy was careful to emphasize that they only wanted to show appreciation, not cause any trouble or frighten anyone. Word spread through the motorcycle community like wildfire. Chapters from neighboring cities heard the story and wanted to participate. The Iron Wolves from Phoenix called to say they were riding down. The Road Warriors from Tucson announced they were organizing a convoy. Even some independent riders who had known Frank during his active years asked to join. By Wednesday evening, Tommy's phone was ringing constantly. Local police contacts who had working relationships with the club for community events were notified about the planned gathering to ensure there wouldn't be any misunderstandings. "We're not planning a rally or a protest," Tommy explained to Sergeant Maria Gonzalez, the police community liaison. "We just want to show appreciation to someone who helped one of our own. It'll be peaceful and brief." Sergeant Gonzalez, who had worked with the motorcycle clubs on charity rides and community events, understood the culture of honor and respect that drove these gatherings. "Just keep it orderly, Tommy, and maybe give the hospital a heads up so they're not caught off guard." As Thursday approached, the number of confirmed participants continued to grow. What had started as a simple gesture of appreciation was becoming something much larger. Tommy realized they needed to be careful about how they approached this. The last thing they wanted was to frighten Sarah or make her feel uncomfortable about her act of kindness. Thursday morning began like any other for Sarah Martinez. She woke up at 6 o'clock in her small 2-bedroom house in the Riverside neighborhood, made coffee and checked her phone for messages. Her shift at Memorial Hospital didn't start until noon, which gave her time to run errands and clean the house. Sarah had been a registered nurse for 8 years, specializing in emergency care. She loved her job despite its challenges and stress. Helping people during their most vulnerable moments gave her life purpose and meaning. Her colleagues often joked that she was too generous for her own good, always volunteering for extra shifts and bringing homemade meals for the staff during busy periods. The previous evening's encounter with Frank at the grocery store had stayed with her thoughts. She hoped the elderly man was doing well, and that the groceries would last him through the week. Sarah made a mental note to keep an eye out for him during future shopping trips, wondering if there might be other ways to help without making him feel uncomfortable. After breakfast, Sarah decided to work in her small garden. She had inherited her love of plants from her grandmother and found gardening therapeutic after long shifts at the hospital. Her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, waved from her kitchen window as Sarah watered her tomato plants and tended to the flower beds. Around 10 o'clock, Sarah's phone rang. It was her friend and colleague Jessica, another nurse from the emergency department. "Hey, are you working today?" Jessica asked. "There's something weird happening outside the hospital. There are motorcycles everywhere." Sarah laughed. "Maybe there's a charity ride or something. You know how those biker groups do fundraisers for hospitals sometimes?" She had seen similar gatherings before, where motorcycle clubs organized events to raise money for medical facilities or children's programs. "This seems different," Jessica continued. "There are hundreds of them, and they're all just sitting there in the parking lot. Security is getting nervous because nobody knows what they want." Sarah felt a small flutter of curiosity but wasn't particularly concerned. Memorial Hospital was located on a major street that bikers often used for rides and gatherings. She assumed it was probably a coincidence that they had chosen the hospital parking lot as a meeting point. After finishing her garden work, Sarah showered and prepared for her shift. She packed her lunch, gathered her work badge and stethoscope, and headed to her car. The drive to the hospital usually took about 15 minutes through residential streets and light traffic. As Sarah turned onto Hospital Boulevard, she immediately noticed something unusual. Motorcycles lined both sides of the street for several blocks. Riders stood beside their bikes, talking in small groups. Some held signs, though she couldn't read them from her car. The gathering was much larger than anything she had seen before. Sarah felt her heart rate increase slightly as she approached the hospital entrance. The main parking lot was indeed filled with motorcycles and their riders. She had never seen so many bikers in one place, and she couldn't imagine what had brought them all together at her workplace. She parked in the employee section and walked toward the hospital entrance, noticing that many of the bikers were watching her direction. Some nodded respectfully as she passed, which confused her even more. Their expressions weren't threatening or angry, but rather seemed almost expectant, as if they were waiting for something specific to happen. Sarah badged into the hospital through the employee entrance, her mind racing with questions about the unusual gathering outside. She had no idea that she was about to discover the connection between her simple act of kindness 2 days earlier and the massive show of respect that had assembled in her honor. Sarah barely made it through the employee entrance before being approached by Dr. Patricia Williams, the hospital's chief administrator. Dr. Williams looked both confused and slightly anxious as she intercepted Sarah in the hallway. "Sarah, I need to speak with you immediately," Dr. Williams said, guiding her toward the administrative offices. "There are several hundred motorcycle club members outside asking to speak with you specifically. They say you helped one of their brothers at a grocery store?" Sarah's mind went blank for a moment. Then the memory of Frank at the corner market flashed through her thoughts. "I helped an elderly man named Frank with his groceries on Tuesday night," she said slowly. "But I don't understand the connection to—" "They're saying he's someone important to their community," Dr. Williams continued. "The police are here as a precaution, but the bikers have been completely peaceful. They just want to thank you personally." Through the administrative office windows, Sarah could see the massive gathering more clearly. Hundreds of motorcycles filled every available space in the parking lot and lined the surrounding streets. Riders stood in organized groups, many holding signs that she could now see read, "Thank you, Sarah," and "Angels help angels." Security Chief Robert Hayes joined the conversation. "Ma'am, I've been doing this job for 20 years and I've never seen anything like this." The leader, a man named Tommy Rodriguez, asked permission to speak with you. He's been very respectful, but they're not leaving until they can express their gratitude. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of the situation. Her simple gesture of paying for an elderly man's groceries had somehow mobilized hundreds of people. "What exactly do they want to do?" she asked. "They want to present you with something," Chief Hayes explained. "Rodriguez says they've organized a collection for you, and they want to honor you in front of their community." He also mentioned that the man you helped, Frank Williams, is a founding member of their organization and highly respected among bikers throughout the region. Dr. Williams looked at Sarah with a mixture of admiration and concern. "This is completely unprecedented, but it's also rather remarkable. These people have traveled from multiple states just to thank you. However, I want you to know that you're under no obligation to meet with them if you're uncomfortable. Sarah thought about Frank's kind eyes and grateful handshake at the grocery store. She had seen genuine appreciation in his expression, but she never imagined her small act of kindness would resonate so deeply with an entire community. "Is Frank out there?" Sarah asked. "Yes," Chief Hayes replied. "Rodriguez says he's the guest of honor for this gathering. Apparently your kindness reminded them that they needed to take better care of their elder members." Sarah took a deep breath and looked out at the sea of motorcycles and leather-clad riders. Despite their intimidating appearance, she could sense an energy of respect and gratitude rather than threat. These people had organized something extraordinary just to say thank you. "I'll meet with them," Sarah decided. "But I want you to know that what I did was nothing special. Anyone would have helped Frank in that situation." Dr. Williams smiled. "Sarah, I think you're about to discover that not everyone sees kindness the way you do. This community obviously considers what you did to be very special indeed." As they prepared to go outside, Sarah felt nervous but also curious about what these hundreds of people wanted to tell her about her simple act of helping a stranger buy groceries. When Sarah walked out of the hospital's main entrance, accompanied by Dr. Williams and Chief Hayes, a hush fell over the massive gathering. Hundreds of bikers, who had been talking in small groups, turned their attention toward the small woman in scrubs who had unknowingly become their hero. Tommy Rodriguez stepped forward from the crowd, removing his sunglasses and approaching with respectful confidence. Behind him walked Frank Williams, looking clean and dignified in clothes that were clearly new. Frank's eyes were bright with emotion as he saw Sarah again. "Ms. Martinez," Tommy said, extending his hand. "I'm Tommy Rodriguez, president of the Desert Riders chapter. On behalf of motorcycle clubs throughout the Southwest, I want to thank you for what you did for our brother Frank." Sarah shook Tommy's hand, still amazed by the scope of the gathering. "I'm honored to meet you, Mr. Rodriguez, but I really don't understand why helping Frank buy groceries would bring so many people here." Frank stepped forward, his voice stronger than it had been in the grocery store. "Sarah, may I call you Sarah? What you did for me wasn't just about the money. You treated me with dignity when I was struggling. You didn't look down on me or make me feel ashamed. That kind of respect means everything to people like us." Tommy nodded in agreement. "Frank Williams helped build our brotherhood 40 years ago. He's mentored hundreds of riders, helped families through tough times, and earned respect throughout our community. When someone shows kindness to him, they're showing kindness to all of us." A woman stepped forward from the crowd, introducing herself as Maria Santos, wife of the Desert Riders vice president. "We've organized a collection for you," she said, presenting Sarah with an envelope. "Every club member contributed what they could. We know you work hard taking care of people, and we wanted to help take care of you." Sarah opened the envelope and gasped. Inside were dozens of bills totaling several $1,000s. "I can't accept this," she said immediately. "I was just helping a neighbor. This is too much." "It's not too much," called out a voice from the crowd. A rider named Carlos stepped forward. "Frank helped me stay clean when I was struggling with addiction 15 years ago. He gave me a job, a place to stay, and a reason to keep fighting. Your kindness to him honors all the kindness he's shown us." More voices joined in, sharing stories of how Frank had impacted their lives. Sarah learned that during his active years with the club, Frank had organized charity drives for children's hospitals, helped families pay for funerals, and provided guidance to young men who needed direction. Tommy raised his hand for quiet. "We also want to make you an honorary member of our brotherhood," he announced. "You've shown the kind of character and heart that we value most. From now on, if you ever need anything, you have 300 brothers and sisters who will be there for you." The crowd erupted in cheers and the sound of motorcycle engines revving in salute. Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes as she realized the profound impact her simple gesture had created. Frank took her hand gently. "You gave me more than groceries that night, Sarah. You gave me back my dignity and reminded me that there are still good people in the world. These folks want to make sure you know that your kindness created ripples throughout our entire community." Sarah looked out at the hundreds of faces surrounding her, seeing respect, gratitude, and genuine affection in their expressions. She realized that this gathering wasn't really about her act of kindness at all. It was about a community coming together to honor one of their elders and to celebrate the values they held sacred. "Thank you all," Sarah said, her voice carrying across the quiet crowd. "Frank, you deserve all the love and respect these people are showing you. And to everyone here, thank you for reminding me why small acts of kindness matter so much." The gathering at Memorial Hospital lasted for another hour, with bikers taking turns to meet Sarah personally and share their own stories of kindness and community. Local news stations arrived to cover the unusual event, but Tommy Rodriguez politely declined most interviews, explaining that this was a private matter of honor and respect. As the crowd began to disperse, Frank approached Sarah one final time. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small wrapped package from his jacket pocket. Inside was a silver pendant shaped like angel wings. "This belonged to my wife Margaret. She always said that angels come in many forms, and they're not always who you expect them to be." Sarah accepted the pendant with trembling hands, understanding the significance of such a personal gift. "Frank, this is beautiful, but are you sure you want to give this away?" "Margaret would have wanted you to have it," Frank replied firmly. "She spent her life helping people just like you do. She would have loved knowing that her memory lives on with someone who shares her generous heart." Tommy Rodriguez handed Sarah a business card with contact information for the Desert Riders chapter. "We meant what we said about being there for you. If you ever need anything, day or night, you call that number. We take care of our own and your family now." Over the following weeks, Sarah's life changed in unexpected ways. The money collected by the motorcycle clubs allowed her to pay off her student loans and make improvements to her small house. More importantly, she gained an extended family of people who checked on her regularly and included her in their community events. Frank became a regular visitor to Sarah's home, often bringing vegetables from a small garden that the Desert Riders had helped him plant behind his apartment. Their friendship bridged generations and backgrounds, proving that kindness creates bonds that transcend social boundaries. The motorcycle club organized a monthly charity drive to help other elderly community members with grocery bills and basic needs. They called it the Angel Fund in honor of Sarah's original gesture. Frank became the coordinator, using his experience and wisdom to identify people who needed assistance. Sarah discovered that many of the bikers were veterans, single parents and working-class people who had formed strong bonds through shared experiences and mutual support. She began volunteering at some of their charity events, bringing her medical skills to health fairs and safety clinics they organized. 6 months after the grocery store encounter, Sarah received an invitation to Frank's 73rd birthday party, organized by the Desert Riders at their clubhouse. She arrived to find a celebration that included dozens of families, children playing games, and a community barbecue that felt more like a family reunion than a biker gathering. During the party, Frank stood up to address the crowd. "A year ago, I was struggling and felt forgotten by the world. One act of kindness from a stranger changed everything. It reminded me that I have a family that cares about me, and it brought all of us closer together." He looked directly at Sarah, who was sitting at a picnic table surrounded by club members and their families. "Sarah showed me that angels really do walk among us. Sometimes they wear scrubs instead of wings, and sometimes they show up in grocery stores when you need them most." The crowd erupted in applause, and motorcycle engines revving in celebration. Sarah realized that her simple decision to help a stranger buy groceries had created something beautiful and lasting. It had strengthened a community, honored an elder, and created friendships that would endure for years to come. As she drove home that evening, wearing Margaret's angel wing pendant and carrying leftovers from the party, Sarah reflected on how one small act of kindness had taught her that we never know the full impact of our compassion. Sometimes helping a stranger becomes the beginning of finding a new family.